and welcome to episode 2 of the Stitch Lab Knitting Podcast. So I guess the first thing I should talk about is what I'm wearing, and I'm wearing a crochet jumper that I made probably 5 years ago. I designed the flower motif myself. I was inspired by quite a few alpha charts that I found online, but when I swatched for them, I found a lot of them looked a lot like fried eggs in my stitch pattern. I think I did a double crochet, which just makes the stitches a bit longer. So if you're going off an alpha chart pattern, it does stretch out the design quite significantly, and I think you can still sort of tell that that's the case. But yeah, overall I was so pleased with how this works. It was made just using Flinders cotton, which is available at Spotlight, and I purchased a lot more than what I needed of the orange and red, and then the yellow was leftovers from another project, and that's actually a bamboo cotton. Yeah, so no pattern. I just made it in pieces and seamed it, and then I would just hold the pieces up to my front and be like, okay, yeah, that looks like it fits. And it is just like a drop shoulder, so there wasn't too much shaping involved. And I didn't add any ribbing on the neckline, but I did add this sort of faux ribbing that you can make with crochet. It's sort of, you crochet through the back loop only to create this sort of ribbing look. Functionally, it is not the same as ribbing, like it doesn't have the same like sorry, got the hiccups. It doesn't stretch as much as knitted ribbing is. And since this project, I've helped a few of my friends add knitted ribbing onto the edge of the crochet garment, and that works much better, I think. Although I suppose with cotton's not the stretchiest anyway, so yeah, but it looks good. That's the main thing. I decided not to add any to the neck because it's already quite close, and I think it works quite well. I'm quite pleased with it. It's very comfortable to wear. It's very all seasons because of the cotton. Yeah, it's warm enough for an Australian winter. Mostly, and sorry. Yeah, I'd say the only thing, if I was to make it again now, that I would change is that I would bring the front edge down slightly, and I'd put some sort of indication as to what's the front and what's the back, because when you pick up the garment, it's really hard to tell whether it's inside out or not, and which side is the front and which is the back. And I know that I made the panels differently, so there is a difference, but it's really hard to tell when you just hold the garment up. I've been thinking about making a tag and putting it in the back. So that's on my to-do list. And the other thing I would change is I would just make it a bit longer. Yeah, anyway, on to the rest of the video. So today I have 3 finished objects for you, 2 works in progress, kind of 3, and then a few acquisitions and future plans. So grab yourself a nice cozy beverage and settle in. I'm sure there's a lot of yapping yet to do, so thank you for joining me. Let's get started. So the first thing that I have to show you today is my wave sweater. I won't talk too much about it because I have a whole video about the process of knitting this, dyeing the yarn, knitting it, and some of the trials and error that came along with that. but it's been a little while since I've finished it now, and I've gotten a lot more wear out of it, and it's holding up really well. Okay, I don't think the hanger is a good idea. Like I've worn this with a backpack and quite a lot of walking days, and there's absolutely no pilling at all, which is really good. And yeah, I'd say it's quite good. It's definitely a very oversized fit, and I noticed that the shaping, there is short row shaping on the back, but it's not that significant. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 compared to 4. So there's only 4 rows of short row shaping. Maybe I've done it wrong, but on my sweater there's only 4 rows of short row shaping, and that's really not enough to pull the front collar up, the back collar up, and the front collar down away from your neck. So I do get that sort of stretched look across the neck, because the collar definitely does stand up on its own. It's a mock neck, so it sort of like pulls against the front of my neck, which isn't uncomfortable. It's just not really how the sweater's designed to be. It's the type of jumper that you feel fine, and then all of a sudden you're way too hot and you need to like take it off very quickly. But if you're like me and you're new to knitting with mohair, that's definitely something to keep in mind, that they are very warm jumpers, so you might get slightly less use out of them if you don't often go places that are very cold. Yeah, I'd say this is absolutely a success. I'm so pleased with it. Okay, my next finished object is my socks. These are 80% alpaca socks. The other 20% is nylon, and they are so soft and they're so warm. And I think they turned out quite well. I think I might have knit the toe slightly too big. You can see it's a bit loose on the sock block. I don't usually actually block my socks. I spent a really long time when I first started knitting socks finding sock blockers, because I didn't want wooden ones just because you're putting wet socks on them, and and it was particle board was what most people were using to make them, so that didn't make much sense to me. Anyway, I eventually bought some and then immediately realized that I didn't really want them because I like blocking them on my feet essentially. So I just let them dry flat, and then when you put them on with your shoes, they sort of mold to the shape of your foot, and that you don't really want to pre-stretch them on a block. But yeah, anyway, I thought it would be a good way to display them for you anyway. But yes, I did a 3x1 rib throughout the whole sock, including on the sole, which I think I prefer to continue the design along the sole as well. I don't have very sensitive feet in terms of feeling things like that, so I prefer to just continue the pattern as long as it's not something super lumpy like a cable. If it's lace or if it's some sort of rib design, I like to continue it on the sole. I just think it's more fun. You know, you're putting in all the effort to knit yourself a pair of socks. They don't have to be the most, you know, you don't have to stop yourself short at decorating the sole of your foot. Yeah, I did a sort of slip stitch heel where you alternate which column is going to be slip stitches for the right side and wrong side rows. And it shrunk up so much more than any other sock yarn that I've used before. So I don't know whether my gauge was just off. I was feeling a little bit sick when I was knitting the heels. So I don't know whether my tension was just really off. But that's okay. They ended up fitting more like a Flegel heel than a heel flap and gusset, because the heel flap shrunk up so much that it's kind of like the mini heel flap of a Flegel heel. Anyway, they fit really well, and they're very cozy. You can kind of see what I mean now, like if I take them off. I don't know. So in the last episode I mentioned that I was attempting to knit a folded over scalloped edge. And you can see when they're off the sock blocker, you can kind of see that an attempt has been made. And a few people that I've shown this to are like, yeah, it worked. And yeah, I guess off the foot, yes, it looks fine. But even on the sock blocker, you can see it stretches out so much that it's not really obvious. And then I have quite thick ankles, so it becomes even less obvious on my leg. And in fact, I think also, not only is the scallop not deep enough, I think if I was to do a folded over cuff again, I would do it significantly deeper, because when it's stretched, it does look a little bit too skinny on my quite large ankles. But anyway, again, I would call these a success. They're very warm. I mentioned in the last episode that I was really worried about the fragility of animal fiber socks compared to my cotton socks. But yeah, I think while knitting I realised how strong the yarn really was, and it's reinforced with the nylon, so really I have nothing to worry about. And they are really cozy and warm, so I haven't worn them yet, but I will start wearing them soon. Probably not in work boots, but you know, with other outfits. I think these will be very nice. And yeah, I'll keep you posted on how they hold up in comparison. And like, there's quite a lot of the alpaca hair. It's quite loose of a spin for a sock yarn. And the fuzz, like, just really isn't even. Like, there are some bits where it sticks up heaps and some parts where it sticks up a lot less. So yeah, I'm just curious to see how they pill and whether that fuzziness just completely goes away as those long fibers fall out, or yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. Cool. So for my next finished object, I don't have it with me. When I was leaving Tassie, where I was knitting the hot water bottle cover, I'll show you a video that I have of the finished object. My sister had squirreled it away into her room and was using it. And I decided that she could have it and that I would just knit another one, because I was very hopeful in thinking that I'd only used half of the ball that I had for the project. I had 3 balls of yarn and I thought I'd used about half of each one. So I was like, okay, well, you can have this, you know, and I'll make myself a matching one and it'll be really cute. So I left it there. And then when I got home, I realised actually I'd used up more like 80% of the yarn. And there was no way that I had enough to continue with the same 3 colours. So that didn't work out too well, but the hot water bottle cover itself I'm really pleased with. I didn't catch any of my floats for the colour work, even though there's some that are like 12 stitches long, because I figured you're not really pulling it in and out of the cover very often. Like once the cover's on, it's on, and you leave it. So I figured that the long floats would look better and work better in the end than if you catch your floats and sometimes they sort of pull on the front of the work, and I really didn't want that. So yeah, it's got really long floats on the back, but the tension still maintained itself quite evenly. It fit really well. There's a little bit of looseness at the top of the neck of the hot water bottle, but apart from that, it fits very well. And I did end up going with the folded over flap for the very top. So you can unfold it, fill it with water, and then fold it back on top so you don't have any rubber touching you when you take it to bed. So yeah, I'm very pleased with how that worked. And yes, there will be another one on my needles shortly, I suppose. Yeah, but very pleased with this finished object, so that's another huge success. So the next work in progress is less successful, but there's a lot that I've learned from it, and it's another sister gift for my older sister. I was requested to make her a navy blue jumper with a bone on it. So this is attempt number 1, we're going to call it. So I used the Sibling sweater pattern, which I've made before and really loved. And I thought, you know what I could do is knit the full back half and then knit the front as a panel. Like I could still pick up on the shoulders and knit down and knit back and forth rather than in the round, and that will make doing the colour work a lot easier. Which I think was a great plan. And you can see I've sewn it up now. And so when I got to the end of the stocking knit portion of the front, I took the stitches from the back that I'd put on hold and then knit the ribbing in the round, because I thought that might help make it look a little bit more seamless, which I think it does. I think it's something I need to practice, is seaming garments, because I thought it would be really easy to make it look totally invisible, but you can definitely see that seam. So I think I do need to work on that. I'm thinking that I should have done like a slip stitch at the end of each row to help with the seaming process, but it's too late for that. So yeah, anyway, so onto the issues. So I think that method worked out pretty well. And you know, I have armholes that I could pick up in the round and continue the pattern as normal. But I just, because this is, how many colours? I guess there's 4 colours per row for this intarsia, and I didn't want to split my navy yarn so that I'd have one navy on this side and one on that side. So you've got navy floats going across the whole way. And then I decided to do the same thing with the black yarn. So the black, you know, there's a float from here all the way to here. So that's another issue, is that I should have just had like a left-hand side and a right-hand side for both of those. And I was just not very experienced when I started off. I think even though those issues continued, that's against most advice. Okay. you can see the bottom worked out quite well. Like, I'd be quite pleased if the whole motif was like this. And I think I just got better at connecting, like when you're interchanging between colours and twisting the stitches, twisting the colours in the right order, and holding the floats at the correct tension. So I think I got the knack of it at the very end. And that's when I started using, from probably about here, I started using lengths of yarn in tiny little bobbins rather than having the whole ball of yarn attached. And that definitely made it a lot easier. So yeah, I think the bottom is quite good. I went a little bit off pattern though, because I lost my slip of paper that I'd printed the chart onto. So it's not perfect, even though it's better. And yeah, the top part, like, there's just no amount of finessing that could make this work out to be flat. And I think it's so bad that it's pulling this, which is supposed to be the head of a humerus, which is quite large and round, and it's pulling it so that it's quite narrow and boxy looking. So it's just not recognizable as a bone. So that's quite disappointing. Obviously, it's quite a lot of knitting that's gone into this. So I think the plan now is to rip back to all the way up to here and knit back down just plain with the navy yarn, and then duplicate stitch on the bone motif. I think before I do that, I'm going to just use some of this space here to do a little bit of practicing duplicate stitch and just make sure that the white shows up well against the navy, because what I'm worried about is that I won't get a crisp white, is that I'll get a white but every single little V of the stitch will have like a little bit of navy poking out either side, and I think that sort of ruins the look. So I'll test it out and see if I like it or not. And then if I do, then I'll continue with that. And then if I don't like it, then I'll try intarsia again. I think my technique has developed significantly since I first started the project. So hopefully that will be enough to make this passable. But yeah, my sister that this is for, like, because it's a gift knit, I really want it to be more perfect than what I would accept for myself. And I accept mistakes that I make, and I know that most people aren't seeing those mistakes in the same level of detail that I make them, that I see them, because they're my mistakes. So I tend to just embrace them, whereas this sister is quite particular with what she wears, so I think it needs to be made to a much higher standard. And I know that she would happily accept it and then perhaps not wear it as much as I would hope if it wasn't up to that standard. So I really want it to be good so that it will get a lot of wear. Yeah, so that's where that's at. I got it to this level of finished a week and a half ago now, and I haven't touched it. I was with my sister in Cairns at that point, and she tried it on, and it was just really disappointing. But the fit was good, the length was good, like, so there was a lot of positive, but you know, I'd worked quite hard to get it to a point where she could try it on while I was visiting her, and yeah, didn't quite go to plan, but that's okay, because her birthday is not until the end of October, so I've got heaps of time. It would have been good to give it to her in time for winter to end, rather than, halfway through spring. So yeah, but anyway, that's that project. The next project is also an intarsia piece, which has been much more successful, and annoyingly, this piece is for myself. It's worked out really well, and I haven't had any issues, even though I haven't followed the pattern. So this is the Flower Power Pullover by Degen, and this is how much I've made so far. So I am quite a good way through the front, and yeah, I'm quite pleased with the way that it's coming out. I think, there it is. It's surprising to me, like the contrast between the balls of yarn is quite significant contrast, and then when it's knit up, it's a much lower contrast to my eyes. I think it's because of the tweediness, especially of the red. You can see there's yellow and orange flecks, and that does sort of blur the lines a little bit. And there is some of this reddy brown in the yellow as well. But I think it looks quite good, and the colours really match the retroness of the design. Yeah, which I really like, and I really like the way this fabric is working out. I'm using 5mm needles, sorry, 4.5mm needles, which feels huge compared to 4mm, which is hilarious. Yeah, and at the moment the fabric is quite gappy. I'm not sure whether you can see through it. I can see through it. Yeah, so it's quite gappy, but it is like a single ply yarn. So, and it's got a significant amount of alpaca in it. I think it is, you know what, I don't know, I'm going to put it on the screen, but it's nylon, merino and alpaca. Quite a bit of nylon. And it's in a single ply. So I think it's going to bloom quite significantly, so I'm okay with the gappiness of the project as it is. Like, I think it would be fine as is. I think I would be judged by more experienced knitters for having such a gappy knit. Like, it looks poorly tensioned, or like the gauge is off the way that it is, even though I think the feel of the fabric is nice. I think, I don't know, people can be a bit snobbish with things like that, I guess. But anyway, I think it will bloom really nicely. And the person who I bought this yarn off, it was through Facebook Marketplace, and she had knitted a swatch. She had knit a swatch and blocked it, and that was super soft and super full and dense. So I'm quite confident, even though I didn't block it or swatch it myself. Yeah, so I'm super pleased. So far I'm following it exactly to pattern, except the intarsia part of it. So in the pattern, she suggests that you have one ball of red there, one for here and one for there, and then two yellow. So she wants you to have 5 balls or bobbins of yarn attached to the project at once. And at first, like, I was good, and I was like, okay, well, I'll give it a go because this is one of the first Intarsia projects that I've done. So I'll give it a go. And I just found it way too much to manage. Like, the yarn management was way too difficult, and I didn't want to have that many breaks in the yarn, to have smaller bobbins, but then with bigger balls, then, like, you know, this is quite a lot. 5 of those is a lot to have attached and hanging off at any point of time. It was just so much to manage. So I decided that I was going to do like a combination and to use just the one ball of the main colour going back and forth, and then have one ball for each of the yellow stripes. Like, I didn't want to have big floats between the motifs, but I didn't mind having just floats of red across the flower because it's not that much. Like, even there's some rows where you're going all the way across with the yellow. There's not a single stitch of red. But even then, that's not that much, and I've just been catching my floats once on each side. And yeah, seems to be working fine. I think my floats look okay. Yeah, so that's sort of the only modification that I've made, is just with the technique. Oh, I've dropped some stitches. Yeah, so that's the modification that I've made. It's just with the technique of the Intarsia. Another thing is that the pattern, like, it is obvious, but at the same time it's not obvious that the flower is not symmetrical. And I was getting really confused because you just get one chart, so you just have to remember that on a single row you're reading the same chart left to right and right to left. And I was just kept getting mixed up between the two. So these 2 flowers are not correct. There's quite a few mistakes in them. I think they look fine, and like, they're not big mistakes, but like, I would get confused whether I was working on the right hand side chart, on the inside, blah blah blah. I was just getting confused. So what I did was, on one side of the chart I drew a little love heart, and then I attached these 2 little love heart stitch markers so that I would know, okay, I'm on the love heart side, and now I'm on the other side. And that just worked so much better to me than thinking about it as the left hand side of the chart, which on the left hand flower is the right hand side. You know, it was too much for my little brain. So that made reading the pattern way easier. Unfortunately, I only came up with that idea halfway through the flower, and the leaf portion of the design is symmetrical. Yeah. Another thing is that the actual flower chart, I don't want to show it to you because I feel like that's what you pay for with the pattern. But the chart has like the big solid lines every 5th column, so it's supposed to make it easier to read. But for one of those like thick columns, it's actually only 4 stitches, not 5. And that really got me. For the first few rows, I was confused why my count was off. And yeah, it's because it looks like you've got 2 thick rows on one side of the flower and 2 on the other. But on one side it's 10, and on the other side it's only 9. Which, yeah, isn't that big of a deal. I just feel like you could add like just a plain column on the side just to showcase that there is like just an ordinary non-color work column on the edge, and then it would be even. I'm not sure. I just feel like it should be more obvious in the pattern that that's the case. You know? It would like, yeah, anyway. Quite pleased with it. It's coming along quite fast. Even though I put this on pause when I was starting this project. So I'm not sure what I'm going to prioritize now, because I was strongly prioritizing this for my trip up there to hopefully gift it to her at that point. But now that, you know, that's not going to happen, and I've got quite a few months until her birthday, then it's no longer like high priority. But maybe I should just, I think I'll at least frog it straight away, just to get the worst part over and done with, so that I can just enjoy knitting it when I decide to pick it back up. So yeah, I'm not sure which out of the two of those is going to be my main project. So this is sort of a work in progress in a way, and kind of not. This is the other half of my matching hot water bottle cover with my sister. So these are the original 3 colours that I used in that hot water bottle. And yeah, like I said, I thought I'd use about 50% of each one, but when I came back and weighed them, then I think this was like 80 grams. No, sorry. Yeah, this was just less than 50 grams. And I'd started with 150. So I needed over 100 grams for it. I searched through my yarn stash, my mum's. Couldn't find anything that matched. I then thrifted this pink yarn, which brought the count up to like 83 grams, and I think it looks really good. Still not quite enough. And then just yesterday, actually, I thrifted this Pure New Wool, sort of a cheapo brand, but I found this, and I think that will do as the colour scheme. So now I'm not sure whether I'll actually include this original dark green, and then it could be these 4 colours, but I might add in a little extra colour, because why not? I think my goal should be maybe to finish these 4 off completely and then just use this as the top and tail of the cover, in the same way that I used this as the colour to sort of just use it at the bottom and at the top, and that's really it. So I might try and do that. But yeah, so that's going to be my next little side project, to replace the socks, I guess, although the socks are really more of a travel project, so I think I need to start another project that's just on a slow burn for when I'm on a train or on a bus or wherever, that I need a small little project that's easily transportable, because even though this is quite a small project, the colour work sort of means that it takes up more space, both in the bag and also physically. It's, it's not easy to contain it to just my lap. Like, it's easier if I can put the multicolours down next to me. So I'm not sure about that. So yes, that brings us nicely into acquisitions. So these two are new. They're both just DK 100% pure wool. Yeah, so they both feel quite rustic, but nicely match what I had going on for these. So pleased with those. So yeah, after this, I then also purchased this. It's just 100% cotton. This is a very common brand, but I managed to thrift it for 50 cents per ball, and I thought it'd be perfect to use as a little tester for any of my dyes, my natural dyes that I've been sort of thinking on. So when it comes to testing them, then I'll have a cotton, and I think I have quite a bit of like baby merino, so I can have an animal fibre test, and then I can use this as the plant fibre test. The problem is that in both cases they have been bleached to be white, like neither the natural colour of the fibre. But I think that's okay, because that's probably mostly what I'll be dyeing, is pre-treated or pre-dyed yarns. So yeah, and that also comes to my last acquisition, which is a book that two of my friends thrifted for me. Dyes from plants, Australia and New Zealand, which is perfect because that dye book that I was showing you before is really good, and I've been reading through it. There you go. It was $2.50. Yeah, it is really good, but they are based in the Northern Hemisphere, and you do get quite different things here. And I have been thinking a lot about ethical harvesting from nature, which she does talk a lot about in the book. And so I was looking into some invasive species of plants where I live, and I did find one that's already blooming, and that is, I've made a dye sample with it, and that is the fire flower. So it's got really bright yellow flowers, which, okay, pardon the interruption. Just had a very long phone call. But I think what I was up to was just showing you some of the dyes that I've been working on. So this one is from an invasive species, the wildfire flower. Very identifiable, extremely common in my area, and it is like a high priority weed. And you see it all along like train corridors and things like that, and along the highway the seeds get spread sort of by the wind, so whenever you have fast moving cars or trains, they tend to blow the seeds along. So yeah, I've got quite a few spots in my area where I can collect relatively high quantities of this, and I was looking into how to kill the weed, because I didn't want to just put it in my compost in case my compost didn't get to the right heat to actually kill it. And yeah, you just have to boil the rest of the stems and put it in the garbage rather than in the compost. So that's what I did, just to create that little sample. And when I go out to harvest more, I'll have a lot more weeds to kill. I also tried in the book there's a suggestion for dandelion, and that created this really lovely gold colour. It's sort of developed quite a bit. When I first made it, it was a much brighter orangey gold, and now it's much more deep bronzy, you know, partway between brown and gold. But it's quite nice. It has a slight tinge of green even to it. I'm quite pleased with that one. And the one that I'm most excited about is this red, because I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to get anything as bright as this. And this is from the red sap of a gum tree. And in our backyard we have a few gum trees that have had some injuries, and they spew out heaps of this sap to heal themselves. And on the bark and leaf litter around that area, there'll be heaps of this sap on the ground. So I guess because I'm not collecting this wild, it's okay. Like, I'm collecting it within my property, but I definitely think that this is not one that I could create that much dye of. Like, I've got a limited supply, and even though I do see it out like in reserves quite often, I wouldn't necessarily think that it's okay to go about collecting a lot of this sap to use for dyeing, because I'm not sure about the full life cycle of the sap and what else might be using it or needing it. Whereas for the dandelions and the fire flower and the dandelions, I feel like those are sort of unlimited resources in that I can pick as many of them as I want, and not feel bad about it because they are weeds, and in one case very invasive high priority weeds. So yeah, quite pleased with how that's going. And I've bought some mordant. I found you could buy alum just at the local hardware store, because it's what makes hydrangeas blue. So quite easy to get your hands on. Yeah, and I believe that that's all I have to talk about today. So thank you very much for joining me. If you've made it to the end, please consider subscribing, you know, getting on the ground floor, I guess. And if you're one of my friends and family, thank you for making it to the end. Especially, you have to listen to me talk about this in real life, and now you've come online to listen to me talk about it. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.